There's an entire industry to help us be better leaders. Me too, me, I'm included, right? There's an entire industry to help us be better parents. There's an entire industry to help us have better marriages. There's an entire industry to help us eat better, exercise better. And there's precious little on how to be a friend. And if you look at most of the problems that we're having in the world, rise of anxiety, inability to cope with stress, rise of depression, in worst cases, suicide, even the obsession with longevity, friendship literally fixes all those things. It is the ultimate biohack. And yet most of us are pretty bad at being friends. If you ask people, do you think you're a good friend? Most people say, yes, I'm a good friend. Okay, let's peel that onion just a little bit. Would you cancel on a friend for a meeting? Would you cancel a meeting for a friend? Oh, but my friend would understand. And you discover pretty quickly that we're mostly pretty crap at friendship. We might make friends, but do we foster friends? And if you look at the most successful married couples or couple long-term couples, the couples that you're like, I want a relationship like theirs, if you ask them all, what's your secret? They all say the exact same thing. It's hard work and we do the work. How many people in a friendship say it's hard work and we do the work? And it is amazing what friendship does. So one of the questions I very often get when I speak to corporate audiences is, what are the most important, characteristics of great leaders? Vision, charisma, right? I've met some great leaders who don't have big Steve Jobs visions. I've met some great leaders that they don't fit the standard definition of charisma. They're the quiet one in the corner. You'd never know that they were the leader. But there's one characteristic I'm incredibly comfortable at saying all great leaders have, and it's courage. Because leadership is really hard. Courage to put long-term ahead of short-term. Courage to do the right thing. Courage to speak truth to power. Courage to be honest with yourself about your shortcomings. These are excruciatingly difficult things to do. Courage to keep going when all you want to do is give up. And then that raises the obvious question, well, where does courage come from? I don't believe courage is an internal fortitude where you dig down deep and find the courage. Courage is external. Like, the reason you have the courage to jump out of an airplane is because of the external thing, the parachute on your back. The reason a world-famous trapeze artist has the courage to try a brand new death-defying act for the first time is because of the net. It's the external thing. And it's the same for the rest of us. We have the courage to do extraordinarily difficult things or keep going in the face of horrible pain and adversity when we have at least one person in our lives who says, I got your back. You can do this. And if everything goes south, I'll still be here. That's called a friend. And if you have one close friend, at the risk of beating the dead horse, I'll give you a real-life example. So Leaders Eat Last, this book that I wrote, was the most difficult thing I ever did in my life. It was excruciating. And that's because it was so complicated. Every single chapter could have been its own book. It just kept going and going. Just to put it in context, Start With Why, my first book, is about 68,000 words. I sat down to write Leaders Eat Last. I wrote 150,000 words and I was just getting started. And so I couldn't organize it. And I couldn't understand why all these social scientists and biologists that I was interviewing to understand the science, why they had not written my book. It seemed so obvious. Let's take the biology of human decision-making and overlay it on a corporate culture and see what it looks like. I understand now. It was impossible. And I'd been going for over a year. I'd lost 2 relationships because of it, because I was in such a bad shape. I was so stressed out. And I was sitting at my desk one evening, about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, and I gave up. I decided I couldn't do it. It beat me. And I went for a long walk, literally to plan my exit. I went through the checklist. So I'm going to have to tell the publisher I'm not finishing it. Technically, I'm in breach of my contract, which means I have to give back my advance. Okay, check, I'll do that. I'll have to publicly announce, hey, this book that I've been talking about, not going to happen. I'll be humiliated, but I'll get over it, and so will they. Check. And I literally just went through the checklist of quitting, of all the things I'm going to have to do, and emotionally prepare myself for what I was about to do. For some reason, I don't know why, I called a friend. And at the time, he was active duty in the Air Force. And he picked up the phone at 9 o'clock at night, and I don't think I said hello. I think I just asked a question. I said, what do you do when you can't complete the mission? Like, how do they train you? And as is his nature, he told me a story. And he told me a story of when he was in the Air Force Special Forces. He was still in the Air Force Special Forces. And they had a mission. He flew helicopters, and they had a mission in Afghanistan, and all the intelligence said that the air defenses were too good and they were all going to die. They were all going to get shot down. And this wasn't like a kill Hitler mission where you're going to kill Hitler but you're all going to die. This was like you're all going to die and the mission will fail. Literally just pointless. And they were prepping their helicopters ready to go on this mission. And his wingman turns to him and says, they got wives, they've got kids. Turns to him and says, what do we do? Do we refuse to go? We know what's going to happen. We know the outcome. Do we just say we're not going to do it? And my friend turned to him and said, this is what we signed up for. We go. Obviously, cooler heads prevailed and they scrubbed the mission. And he said to me, is this book more or less powerful than Start With Why? I said, the research I'm doing has been incredibly powerful. I actually think I've become a better version of myself because of this book than the first one. He goes, okay, let me tell you something. Before I met you, I became completely disillusioned with the Air Force. I wanted out. And I read this kooky little book called Start With Why. And it completely re-inspired me. And I decided I was going to stay in and be even a better leader. And I've never been happier. He says, if you're telling me that this book is more powerful, he says, you have no choice.
Yeah.
He says, this is what you signed up for. Mm. The underlying message was, and I will be with you. Mm. He didn't say, get back up on that horse. He said, I will be with you through every step of this.
Yeah.
And I went back and finished the book. I mean, not that night. It took me another year, but... and it was awful. The whole experience was awful, but I wouldn't quit because I knew that I had love and support. He never read the manuscript. He wasn't there helping me come up with ideas, but I knew I had a trusting, loving friend in the background, and it gave me all the courage in the world.
Very cool.
That's why we need friends.
Yeah.